Hi, I'm Brian Dunn, and welcome to the most important podcast ever. What makes it so important? It's not about me, it's about you. This podcast is about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, the moments of resilience, the lessons learned, and the small acts that make a big difference. From retail floors to boardrooms to basketball courts, we'll share the untold stories that shape lives and careers. This week, our guest is Jay Pivec, author of the Book of Piv, best subtitle ever, All Stories Are as True as They Need to Be. I've had the great privilege to know Jay for a number of years, and he's one of the all-around good guys you're ever going to meet. And I'm just thrilled to have him here tonight. And this book, the Book of Piv, available on Amazon, is much more than just a book about basketball. It's a book about life. And I think it really also reads very effectively as a management book. Good evening, Jay, and welcome.
Brian, thanks. You got that intro down because I watched some earlier episodes where you were reading off a paper. You got this thing memorized. That's beautiful, man.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks. I got a lot of mail about reading it, so I got it committed for sure. Can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself, Piv, and we'll jump right in?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to celebrate my 70th birthday in about 2 weeks, and I just got a call from my son Tyler, who played for me and another great guy, and he said, "How about I take you to play Pebble Beach on your birthday?" He says,
"Get out of here."
You think you can swing it? I just booked the flights. So there's a little about family and 4 children, grown children, 7 grandbabies. They call me Coachy. It's not Coach. It's not Grandpa. It's not Granddad. Coachy.
I love it.
So I get to pitch baseballs to them and softballs and kick a soccer ball and miss a putt with them. They make the putts.
Awesome.
I miss the putts. So, family guy now. People had asked me, "Piv, what are you going to do?" I mean, you're a ball coach. You've been doing it for 42 years. Your whole life, basically. And I said, I got plenty of things to do, and those plenty of things are family. I mean, that's the key. As you know, I know the love you have for your boys, and I know so many other people that have the same love for their families. So yeah. I'm blessed.
It's the best thing there is. There's no question about it. So, Piv, you mentioned 42 years ago. When did you know you wanted to be a coach?
When I couldn't play. I mean, I was the best player in my mind that ever stepped on any court. Unfortunately, there were other people's minds that said, no, not really. And if the people get a chance to buy the book and look at the back, I was a trash talking, redheaded, left-handed, park legend in my mind. I fouled every guy that I ever guarded, and I loved the game. It was the game. And we have a sort of a saying in our family that basketball or ball is life. And we can't make this thing go too long because we got tip off tonight.
Oh yeah.
The Thunder are playing the Pacers, and we're tuned in. And basketball still is life, but it's taken a second seat. It was a way that I felt I could stay in the game. And when the good Lord was handing out those skills, basketball skills, I was deep in line. But I do believe with my career past me, I had some leadership skills. I was president of the class at Minneapolis Southwest in 1973. And I took a leadership role. And my life was sort of a leadership role. And from the recruiting trails, I recruited Joe, and I coached Will, and we had the time of the life with the Duns, and it was a great run. And those are 2 guys that, of the hundreds, that I had a relationship with, and still to this day, have a relationship with.
Oh yeah,
and that's the beauty. That's the beauty. I would tell Brian, my guys, you do what I ask. And sports is a wonderful thing. I'm not here to be your friend. But if as a result of our relationship, the athletic relationship, coach-player, we become friends, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And I'll just add to that. You and the St. Thomas coaching staff, when Will was on the team, family, my wife passed away. We had a tough time, and the UST players and staff were there for us in every possible way. And so lots of people say we're going to be there and we're going to have the relationship. You've always walked the walk, Piv, and I've always respected and appreciated that about you.
I remember the team at Our Lady of Grace,
Yeah,
and I remember the funeral, and I remember that moment in your life. And our team, it was a teammate who had
yeah,
lost. He lost his mom. You lost your wife, and
yep,
I was. We were happy to be there. It was what we do.
yep.
It was what we do.
And you know, you said that ball is life. It's so true. It's such glue in my life with my three sons. We still, the four of us, the first hour when we all get together is basketball du jour. Whatever is current and interesting in the game. And right now we're on should Tibbs have been fired?
Well, $30 million. I don't know how sad he's feeling right now because, I mean, I'm telling you, there's 30 million reasons that he could probably be on some island right now. You know, they talk in the NBA about when the season's in, what island they go to. He just bought an island.
Right, right. Tibbs is going to be just fine. One of the things, and I've got lots of notes on your book that I really want to ask you about. One of the things you talk about um, in the Piv notes section about how the Gopher basketball experience changed your life, but you talk about staying in the moment. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I was going through, I should have worked for Best Buy because I was a salesman selling women's fashion shoes at Marvin Orrick at Southdale. And for the older listeners, they're going to go, Marvin Orrick, geez, my grandmother bought shoes there. I probably fitted her. And what ha- and what happens is I had no idea where I was going. I knew I had an opportunity, and someone had asked me, tell me about the interview process with Coach Dutcher. Couldn't remember it. I have no idea. I have no idea other than Flip Saunders liked me, Stu Starner liked me, and Jimmy Williams liked me, and that was his staff. So I had an opportunity, but I didn't have a penny to my name, and that was a non-paying job. And I was getting married, and I had to figure out how's this thing going to work. So Dutch said, "Look, we can't pay you. We can't pay for school. We can give you shoes from Gold Country. You can load the shoes in the back of your Ford Fiesta and you can sell them for whatever you want. I'll give them to you at cost and you can mark them up." So I traveled every high school in the metro area, every JUCO and every MIAC school. And I was a shoe salesman and a basketball coach. And I made a living doing that. And one of the things that Jimmy Peterson asked me, he says, Piv, we won the Big Ten title and all you talked about was the JV team. Well, I said, those were my guys. We'd practice for 2.5 hours with the varsity. And I stuck around, missed dinner, missed everything else. And I worked out a group of ragtag non-players. These guys were never going to have a chance to play for the Minnesota Gopher varsity team. But we had the time of our lives. And we get together still in a reunion setting, just that club of guys. And they're like, they start telling some stories. And I say, they're not true. And they look at me and they say, every story about you is true. So, so I stayed in that moment because I didn't know the future. I wanted to be the best, lowest man on a basketball staff I could possibly be. That's all I wanted. That's all I wanted to do. And at that time, one of the tickets to be a college coach was to get a degree, an advanced degree. So I talk about my mentor in the academic world, Dr. March Crody, and he took a liking to me. I got through a master's degree, lucked out. We won the Big Ten title. And, it's one of those things that folks talk about how bad basketball has been. All I know is how good it was in 1982 with a star studded team. And
Oh
I had the
yeah.
opportunity to be around those guys. And to this day, still to a man, we're close. And all of them have helped me in many ways.
I think that idea of staying in the moment is so important. And it's so seductive to look ahead and think about how do I get to the next place? How do I get to the next thing? as I look back on my career and my time, I think if I could go back and talk to my younger self, I would say, savor these moments. So often you're in the good old days and you don't even know it.
When I wrote the
And
book, I was on the ladder on memory lane, and at
yeah,
Minnesota, I was climbing a ladder, but it was one rung at a time. I started my career with Butch Raymond at Mankato State. I ended up at Augsburg, and all of a sudden I'm at the University of Minnesota, and it wasn't a jet propulsion type of advance. It was one rung at a time. And I told you this when we were talking about the show. My dad, Frank Pivec, was a butcher, and he raised 7 kids as a butcher. And he told all of us, I have one sister and the rest are brothers. He says, "Hey, you can make a decent living in this world working half days. You just got to figure out what 12 hours you're going to put in." And and that's never been more true. I remember a conversation I had with young Will. Will said, "Piv, can we meet and just talk about what I should do?" And I said, "Yeah." We went Perkins and we had breakfast. And I said, "You do whatever you're asked, and you find an opening. You know, if you ever watched a mouse get into your house, which I have, we live in an older home. Man, they find ways to get in, and they make the best of those opportunities.
that's
You
right.
just you just got to get the crack. And we don't need to spend a lot of time talking about your son Will, but I'll tell you what, he's got in, and he's
Oh
doing the
yeah.
best he can. He's doing the best he can, and we'll see what happens. Stay in the
Yep. We
moment.
will. We will. We will. In fact, he's going to be an upcoming guest this summer, which I'm kind of excited about.
Well, you got a
Um,
list. You got a list of people that you need to get on this show. I'm just one of them, but I'm waiting to see who it's going
oh,
to be and what you're going to talk about because it's good
we're going
stuff.
to have some fun. You mentioned one of them. I want to get our mutual friend Jim Pete on. Jim Pete will always a good conversation. One of the things I really appreciated, and of course, when I read your book, I think about parallels in my own world. That's what everybody does when they read a book, a memoir, right? And you talk about each step, learning it from the belly of the beast so that when you're ready to take the realms, and we should mention your credentials. Jay Pivec is a Hall of Fame coach with 600, and if I get it wrong, you'll correct me, 605 wins. Is that
You
correct?
know, you know what? The only guy that gets it wrong is John Tower, and he does it on purpose. He'll short me. He'll go, what? He'll go, Piv, what is it? 603? And then I have to use some. Then I have to use some bad words and say, "Come on, man."
One time I was walking into the gym at St. Thomas, and you and I were talking for a few minutes, and John came up to me, and Johnny came up and he said, "I saw you talking to Piv. He telling you how many wins he had."
Well, you didn't
And I
forget.
said
You
605. He said,
didn't.
no, it's 603.
That's a true story too. He
Yep.
he does it every time, and he never goes over. It's not 606 or 607 or
No,
603 with a
of
straight
course.
with that Dr. John Tower psychology straight face.
Exactly. It's all this business going on. What do you think it means? I don't know, coach. Um, anyway, so you're learning your way through this. And one of the things you talk about that I thought was fascinating, Jay, was this notion of being open to relocating. And I've had that talk with a lot of people over the course of my career. And I wonder if you could just say a little bit about that.
One of my first teaching gigs was I coached basketball theory at the University of Minnesota, adjunct professor
Yeah.
teacher, and I told I and I have students from that class that still come back to me and say, "The best advice you gave. What do you think it was?" And I said, if you want to be a college coach, you have to be willing to move. That's just because there are so few jobs and so many coaches. So if the Twin Cities is where you want to live, good luck. If you want to be a college basketball coach, because there
Mm-hmm.
just isn't that many jobs. But if you want to move to Jamestown, North Dakota, Havre, Montana, and do the thing, you have a chance. You probably don't have a chance if you think you have to stay around in your ideal environment, in your ideal
Right.
city. So I think that, I talked to my son about this, and his sales forces that he puts together. Well, he gets guys from all over the world, and it's changed because in that world, people can do what? Work remotely. Okay,
Right.
but some people still have to pick up stake and move. I
Oh
was
yeah.
fortunate. I was fortunate. We were just starting a family, and it was an adventure. And I married a gal who said, "Let's go. Let's go. We'll make friends. You'll make a few enemies. I'll make some more friends to make up for the enemies that you make, and the rest will be history." And it
Right.
and it and it and it, and it worked. And I did make a few enemies.
Hey, you're not living if you don't. That it's going to happen. I,
I
I,
apologize, Brian. I apologize in the book to all but one of them.
I, I also appreciated your apology to the officials, and we'll get to that. Um, I had it's very similar parallel in the business world I was in. I knew I had to move to get certain experiences, and I remember going home and talking to Susie about it, and she was great. She said the kids are young, the kids are 2 and 3. Joe hadn't come along yet, and I said, listen, give me 5 years to go learn what I need to learn on the road, and then we'll get the boys home in time to go to school for a good run. And we did. But I used to tell people there's no substitute for what you learn when you get out of your comfort environment and you go with your beautiful wife, your family, and you start your learning, and your family gets this bonding of starting over again together in a new city.
The adventure, and
Yeah, I think
that's
that's
and that's what it was for us. And you just got tired of stocking shelves on 66th and York.
yeah,
That's
exactly.
that's I know who you are.
Yeah, you do, Piv, and you know what? When not that this is about me, but what the heck? When I was the store manager there, I thought I had absolutely arrived. I was going to be able to buy a house. I was going to be able to take care of my beautiful wife. I was going to be able to raise my sons. And then the world just kept unfolding because we keep learning. We keep learning. Like you, I was observing every single thing I could about how my world worked. Just like you write about in your book, it's one of the reasons why it resonated so profoundly with me. So as you're making your moves, when do you start thinking, yep, this is going to be a 30 or 40-year career for me?
Never did. I didn't. Folks stay in an industry. They change jobs a lot. In coaching, sometimes the jobs are changed for you.
Yeah.
And I addressed that in the book where I was fired at Jamestown, hired the next day, fired at Northern, hired the next day. Just this is some weird stuff, man.
Yeah.
But there were lessons in all of that. And we were not rich in terms of monetarily. We were rich in our relationships. I look back and I'll tell you, it is the most rewarding thing in terms of those relationships, life and death. And on a somber note, and I just tweeted today, I lost one of my first players 2 weeks ago, and I tweeted about it because the obituary just came out. But this guy was a kid that I first met at Northern Montana. He followed me to Minneapolis. Troy Amundson's his name. He followed me to Minneapolis. He lived with my mom and dad. They adopted the kid. He's an uncle to my kids and my brother's kids and so forth. You got death, you got life, you got graduations, you got baptisms, and then you know what? You stay in it long enough, you're coaching one of your guys' kids.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
so the whole gamut, and that's, as I look back, this book was a long stroll down my memory lane. And it
Yeah.
was 4 years in the making and wonderful. It was the COVID hits. I got nothing to do but twiddle my thumbs. I
Right.
started writing a book, and I'm not a writer, but I wrote a book. And people have asked me, or people have told me, gosh, I want to write a book. What's stopping you? Write the book.
Right. Right.
I mean, it's just, well, I don't know how. Either did I. Do you know how to talk? Is your
Right.
story a verbal story? Then tell it. Have other people do the editing. Now, one of the problems is when your wife is one of your edits, she wants to keep a lot of stuff in and you got to put your foot down. And that's never easy with your wife.
Yeah. And do you really put your foot down, Piv? I don't know.
Stop it. Stop
But
it.
I got to say this, as I've read this, it's your voice. I hear your voice. It's genuinely you. And it really is what makes it one of the reasons I think it's so special. It's full of great advice and great counsel, but your voice comes through very clearly. I felt like I was listening to you go on and on, because when you sit and talk to Piv, you don't always get to get a word in. You know,
No, you go because you go on and on. And you never ever want the truth to get in the way of a good story. Ever.
absolutely. And I want to say one thing about the firings. Very bad career decision by university presidents to fire you, because they end
Well,
up leaving in
you know,
short order.
well, none of only one is still living. I don't know what that says, but there was fault on my behalf. Trust me. And if you read the book, some people would say, "Yeah, no, he deserved to get fired."
Yeah.
It was behavior, and it was unbecoming. I wasn't proud of it, and I can tell you right now, the fact that I lived through it, the
Yeah.
fact that I can absolutely laugh my rear end off about it now is really unbelievable.
Yeah.
But it's part of that resiliency, and it's part of that story, that sort of, the fabric of this story. It starts at the beginning, and it ends in a great way, and it ends with faith, family, and friends.
I want to close on that in a few minutes, but I do want to mention one of the things I think is very interesting about your story is that you're on the precipice of going into D1, and you say, wait a minute, and you almost real time take an inventory and say, this isn't going to line up with my values. At
I'm
least
on.
that's how I read it.
No, you're well, and Flip Saunders, God rest my buddy's soul. He's at Tulsa with J.D. Barnett, and he says, I picked the phone up. He goes, "Come on down. They're looking for an assistant. I can get you the job." I get on a plane from Havre, Montana. I get to Tulsa. I lasted 12 hours. And I told Flip, I said, "Not for me." And he says, "Well, your flight doesn't leave for another day." I says, "I booked my own." He said, "Well, they're not going to pay for that." I says, "No, you don't understand. I don't care." And it was at that absolutely fork in the road where I saw what these guys go through. And basketball, Brian, pump and run, pump and run. Basketball's basketball. And I don't care if it's on the AAU circuit in the summer. I don't care if it's coaching Jordan High School, Minneapolis Southwest. The game is the same. And
Yes, it is.
if you're in the gym and you're doing what you love to do, nothing's better. And that was my life. That was my life. I was in the gym every day.
And your love for it has shown through every time I've seen you in the environment. I also think what a great example that you walked your walk. You had your values lined up, and you had this opportunity on one side, and you had really a great, better life in terms of family and balance. And you chose that. And a lot of people wouldn't have chosen that. And not only that, you go on and you win 605 games, and you are working with true student athletes. You're really training people for a life beyond basketball, don't you think?
I tell you what, I'm rewarded every day. I pick up the phone when one of my guys, one of my Piv's pals calls, has a question, has something they want to tell me that's good, has a problem they want to tell me about that's not so good, and we're talking A to Z on problems that are good, problems that are real bad, joys in their life.
Yeah.
And I was able. I didn't know I was doing it. That's the most amazing part. Until I wrote the book. In fact, it took 4 years. It's not a long book, but it took 4 years. And some people have said, "Gee, Piv, what the blank? It. How come?" I said, I stopped. I said to myself, nobody wants to read this. My editors, my wife, the other folks that helped me with this book said, that's not why you should be writing it. It's a legacy. It's something that will never go away. That this book will be on the shelf forever. And I can market it. I can do and it wasn't about sales. Although happy to say cigars and some bourbon have been bought with the sales of this book, and I'm great. I'm grateful for both of those. Now I'm not grateful for losing at Texas Hold'em with my guys that I
Right.
give that I donate their money,
Right.
but there was a little bit of that too, but that wasn't the reason. It was a
Right.
it was a labor, literally a labor of love, and it just kept me engaged. Even when I wasn't engaged, I thought about it every day I was writing it.
I I think that's really a gift, Piv. And but I don't want to sell this book short because it really is a management book too. This man has led people, and leading young men at that age is not the easiest demographic to be working with. And because mistakes get made, don't they, Jay?
They
Mistakes
do.
get made.
Yes, they
And
do.
and I really think if you're out there and you're in a leadership position, I think this book is enormously instructive. And I love it. My copy's all marked up. And I agree with what you're saying. When you hear from your old guys, I hear from people that ran stores. I get a letter every week or so. I love it. It's just the greatest thing. And like you said, Jay, you have no idea in the moment, I'm going to go in and change this person's life. It's just what you do. It's
It
just what
was
you do.
it was what my eighth grade teacher at St. Thomas the Apostle, Sister Peter Damien. How about that for a name?
I love it.
When she was kicking my rear end because I was a smart aleck, and she said, someday maybe, Mr. Pivec, you'll get heavenly wages.
Amen. My nun was Sister Mary Xavier, who used to say to me, "You're bold as a brass monkey." And then Monsignor Bradley would tell me, "You're just a, Brian, me boy, you're a smart ass."
Well, my parish priest, Father Kenny, Bishop Kenny, who has passed away, he didn't say anything. He just whacked me in the back of the head.
Oh, believe me, Piv, I got whacked too. I, uh, I can't thank you enough for all the time. You closed the book so beautifully on family and faith. Was there anything you'd like to add about that? I found it
No,
very moving.
you know what? To a person, the reviews have been, it's a good book, and there's lessons in the book. And I'm doing, I'm active on X, and I post pictures of people I have lunch with that have the book, and I call it the Book of Piv tour. And 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 most of the time they pick up lunch, which is a good thing. And I carry it. I finally found some gold pens because in the book, early in the book, I was in a band. I was a lead singer in a band, The Rare Breed. And of course, the story that's told there is, well, what happened? I bought a gold shirt. And people say, what do you mean you bought a gold shirt? Well, I told the band, I said, we need uniforms, man. We're a soul, funky soul. We had horns and we were James Browning it, Temptation. I was the lead singer, believe it or not. And I said, let's get some uniforms. They said, well, okay. So I went and got them, and I got them blue ones. And then I opened mine up and it was gold.
Not an accident.
True story. And about 2 weeks later, I was out of the band.
And I think that's exactly where we're going to leave it. But I will say, my son Joe's getting married. He just got engaged. I wonder if we could get the band back together for a wedding gig. Just think about it. You don't got to answer.
No, but I could do My Girl, but I couldn't do all verses.
I think I would actually pay for that.
Hey, a lot of people would.
Listen, get out and pick up this book. You will not regret it. It's a great story. It's a great narrative, and it is a great management book, and I cannot recommend it more highly. I want to thank Jay Pivec. Thank you so much, Coach. Appreciate your time and appreciate everything you've done. So that's it for this episode of the most important podcast ever. Again, a big thanks to Coach Pivec for sharing his story, and a bigger thanks to you for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, please share it with someone who might find it meaningful. You can watch and listen on our YouTube channel. I'll post a link, and we're everywhere where you get your podcasts. And I'm also going to post a link so you can pick up this book on Amazon, The Book of Piv, a memoir, all stories as true as they need to be. I love it. Thank you all so much. We'll see you next time.